Live stream audio check. feels like a long time. There we go. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening's meeting of the North Somerset Council Executive. As usual, we are streaming this one on, it says your TV will be turned off in 1 minute. Just little tip off there. We'll be streaming this meeting on YouTube, so please just bear in mind that this will be recorded for posterity, so no swearing or deviation from the agenda if you can, please. We'll dive straight into the agenda because we've got quite a lot on the list this evening. So we'll get on without further ado. We've got all 9 members of the executive present this evening. So item 1 is addresses by members of the public. We have got none. Item 2 is apologies for absence. There are none because everyone is here. Any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest from anyone? None, thank you. So the minutes, can I have a proposer and seconder to approve the minutes of our last meeting on the 21st of June? Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Catherine. Non-executive councillors' addresses, item 5. We've had no notifications, so none there. We've got no matters under item 6 referred to the executive that aren't already on the agenda. And none from the West of England sub-region. So item 8 is the forward plan, which was obviously circulated with the agenda. So we're just going to note that one. Please indicate if you disagree with that, but I can't see any hands, so that's noted. So item 9, which is the first substantial report in the name of Councillor Young, Hannah, the independent review on the Clevedon Seafront scheme. So would you like to move the report, please, Hannah?
Thanks, Mike. I do want to just take a few minutes to introduce this report because it is, to my mind, and I'm sure in the minds of others, a really important piece of work. This independent review was commissioned shortly after the election for Audit West to conduct for North Somerset Council into the development and management of the Clevedon and Seafront and Hill Road scheme. I just wanted to clarify for particularly those who might be watching us online, this is not the final result of the independent review which is currently being undertaken for us by ACOM. So what we have here today is the report of the piece of work that's looking back over how the project was initiated and developed and the funding achieved in the first place, to look at the council processes and governance around that piece of work and to determine what lessons we might need to learn for future projects. The ACOM review is looking forward at what do the community feel about what's happened, what are their views on the scheme, what are the design potential options going forward, and how should we move forward in the future. So just to clarify that this is not the sum total of what we will be looking at in terms of Clevedon Seafront and Hill Road, but this is the first piece of work that has been completed around the lessons learned. So, Audit West, the Council's auditors. This has not actually been part of the formal audit programme, but an add-on to it because of the importance of it and their skills in doing so, commissioned by the Director of Corporate Services. You'll see within the report there are some really helpful, I think, key findings around budget and financing of the scheme, timing of the scheme, consultation and governance, with some more detail in the accompanying table. Since I received the report, I've had discussions with the Council's Chief Executive, Director of Corporate Services and Directors of Place and the Assistant Director of Place responsible for highways and transport, and tried to understand further some of the detail that sits underneath the findings that are within this. So I feel I've got a good sense now of some of the issues that have been flagged up, and I think it's a really helpful piece of work. The recommendation, as you will see, is that time should be allowed for the scheme to bed in and for technical reviews to be undertaken before retrospective changes to the scheme are considered. I think in terms of the timing of this, clearly, as I've mentioned, we've got the ACOM review taking place and looking at those technical elements. We're expecting that ACOM review to, the public consultation ends on the 25th of September. There will be a period of time when ACOM are obviously analysing the results of the survey that's currently ongoing, the drop-in, which actually was today at Clevedon Community Centre, the interviews, the focus groups, and the inputs that came to the public meeting. So an awful lot of analysis to be done over the course of October, and we're expecting them to report on their findings in late October or early November. So while we talk about bedding in, I don't think anyone by any means is talking about kicking things into the long grass. It's about awaiting the results of that other piece of work so that we can come to a sensible conclusion about how we move forward in the future. So that is the formal recommendation. I have also spoken with a number of colleagues around how we ensure not just that we do the right thing in respect to the scheme going forward, but we also are monitoring that we've made the progress that we want to make in terms of the lessons learned that are identified. There are a number within the paper where it's identified that actually things have changed already since the scheme was first developed in 2020. And certainly over the last 18 months, there have been quite a number of changes referenced in the paper to the council's governance around projects, capital projects, and management of them, and also to the availability of frameworks and training for officers who are engaged in delivering projects. But I do think it's appropriate, and I believe colleagues will support me in saying that another next step that we would like to put in place is to develop a detailed action plan, and which I will review on a quarterly basis with the Director of Place and her teams, and also with the Director of Corporate Services, so that we can make sure that we really are learning the lessons that are identified, and that we've put new systems in place where that's required. In terms of anything further, I think colleagues may have questions on the specifics of the report, so I'm not going to go through my own views on some of the aspects of the paper. I think lastly, I just want to say that I think there's a real commitment that we're open and transparent in the way that we move forward on this. The action plan can be a public document. I'm perfectly happy for that to be the case so that others can hold us to account on that. And we absolutely want to make sure that we don't create a situation in which something happens again where there has been a requirement for the review that we're undertaking at the moment. So I'm really happy to take questions on the report.
Thank you, Hannah. And can I just have a seconder for the recommendations as well before thank you, Councillor Caniford. Okay, so in terms of any non-exec members that like to speak, so Councillor Smith, Luke.
Thank you. When I was reading it, well, it came across as half the things I'd write in my leaflets or plan to. However, the specific point I wanted to raise was when it says about the consultation of over 1,000 responses, the you said we did document only had 954, so I don't know where the discrepancies happened. And also, given the election results, there's no mention of what Clevedon actually thought of it from that data, which I would think, well, I know, is largely against it. So is there any data on the Clevedon vote, which, again, according to you said we did, was 2/3 the vote, or total voting block of the 954?
So the review has been an audit of what happened in terms of the initiation of the scheme. It's not an intention to look at what the current situation is or what's happened in terms of elections and so on, because that's not part of the initiation and governance of the scheme to this point. What we do know, of course, is the reason that the council put in place the ACOM piece of work is so that we could get a very clear understanding of what the public of Clevedon wanted to feed back. People vote for all sorts of things in elections. They don't get an opportunity in the ballot box to say, I like, for example, as one, I think we had somebody stand up at a recent council meeting and say, I really like the one-way part of the scheme, but I don't like the parking elements of it. And what we are trying to do now with a very significant piece of consultation work with ACOM is to enable people to say, people may well wish to say, don't like any of it. We've heard loud and clear from certain members of the public that they want the scheme reversed in full. We've heard from other members of the public that they like certain elements and not others, and we've heard from other members of the public at public meetings that they like the whole lot and they'd like it to stay. So I don't think it's for me to preempt the results of that consultation exercise, and I'm really keen and looking forward to seeing the outcome of that in late October or early November when ACOM have completed their analysis.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments from anyone? Councillor Caniford, Mark?
Really just asking Hannah, thank you for that, Hannah, and when reading the report, I find it slightly frustrating, and I don't know whether you did, only because the original scheme cost clearly didn't include Hill Road, which is a superb improvement, and I've been using Cleveland far more since it's been done, because it's just a much better environment in Hill Road. And I'm aware of roadworks that were done around the Weston College area, which cost about 800,000, which was similar to that in Hill Road. So it was very frustrating to see that was wrong, and I'm sure you feel the same, and I don't know whether you had a view on that.
I think thank you, Councillor Caniford. I think one of the biggest things here for me is, although there are a number of areas that are touched on, the piece around how you initiate and govern projects is really, really critical here for me. And in my earlier career life, I've been someone who's run large projects, not in the transport and highway space, it has to be said. And I'm an MSP practitioner, have gone through that formal programme management training. So I think anyone who's done that is really conscious of the fact that if you don't think about things in advance around how you limit the scope of a project, how you determine how you're going to cost it accurately, how you're going to engage stakeholders effectively, and have appropriate training to do that, so that you're doing the right things at each of the right steps. It can be really difficult to get that right from the very beginning, and I think there'll be a number of people who've learned from the process of delivering projects that sadly might not have ended up where we wanted them to end up. People do learn from that, but there is a reason to have that formalised approach, and it enables us to put the checks and balances in place. So I think what you're identifying there, Mark, is was that initial cost of 200,000 just over a right costing, and I think the report is very clear that was substantially underestimated. That's not very helpful for us now, of course, because we're not really talking, I don't think, about a budget which goes from 200,000 to 1.3 million plus the 200,000 thereabouts, which was spent on the additional road surfacing, which is standard work. But we are talking about a scheme which grew through the process, and I think one of the biggest things that I will be wanting to see in the both in the highways and transport space, but other parts of the council projects, the capital projects framework going forward, is that there are those gateways that the report suggests were in this case lacking, so that if a scope increases, it's very clear that there's a decision that is wanted, and it has the full engagement of the community, and it is value for money, and that we're able to take a proper decision on that before moving forward. So I think, sorry, slightly long-winded response, but I think, yes, it needed to be properly estimated at the beginning. There's been a lot of learning in that. It needs to be taken forward, and I'm really assured, actually, by the fact that even without this report, over the last 18 months, there have very, very clearly been substantial changes within the council. I have to say I was quite surprised as a brand new councillor that pre-2020 there wasn't a central projects office in place within the council, and a central framework and the support that officers need to be able to deliver those projects. That's been in place for well over a year now, 18 months I understand. And I think that shows that these were issues that senior officers were picking up and putting remedial action in place. It might not have been as visible to the public, but reports like this enable us to scrutinise and dig deep and understand, actually, has that really been done? And now it's on all of us to be able to use these findings and make sure that we engage with those processes as well, and make sure that we don't let something similar happen again.
Thank you very much. So there are no further questions on this item. So if colleagues could just indicate their support for the recommendations, please. Thank you. That's carried. So item 10, which is introduced by Councillor Caniford, the North Somerset local plan. So Mark, please.
Thank you, Mike. And just for a little background, because some members weren't here, because it was a year ago, pretty much today, that the executive made the decision to look towards, or instruct officers to look towards, a constrained approach in the local plan due to the concerns not just coming from residents in the consultations, but also coming from MPs and the government, that Greenbelt should be protected. Based on that, we went out to look at our locally derived housing requirements, which has reduced our numbers quite considerably, and I would suggest much more aligned to that we believe is required, and those which officers have pretty much said are required. So that has now reduced our figure to 14,985 homes between 24 and 39 in that 15-year period. And this will be, we will be able to protect the homes from flood by avoiding level 3 floodplain, also avoiding building in greenbelt and sensitive sites. It's still going to be difficult, but undoubtedly that is something we'll have to achieve, because we do need homes, and I think we're all agreed on that. Many will be still aware that the planning reforms to the National Planning Policy Framework have not yet been decided, which also puts more pressure on us as councillors and certainly officers trying to get to a place where we want to be. But today's decision is all about giving officers that the ability now to move towards Reg 19, which is the pre-submission work done, so we can then go out to consultation with bring to the next executive the Reg 19, and then out to consultation with our local plan. It's really important we keep to this time frame now, because we do need that local plan in place as quickly as possible due to housing pressures coming from developers, and also we need to have that clear direction of travel, and officers need that clear policy direction. So I hope you will support this today for us.
Thank you, Mark. And is there a seconder for the recommendations? Thank you, Councillor Solomon. So any questions or comments? Yes, Councillor Burden. Pete.
Thank you, Chairman. I totally agree with Mark's approach on this one. I think it is the right way forward. I just have one problem, and that is I'm sincerely hoping work is still going on in the background for a plan B. Because we all know these things, we come up with these lovely solutions, and a change of government or whatever throws a spanner in the works, and bluntly, our environment is far too important and far too valuable to waste. So I think as long as work goes ahead with a plan B for the higher number, I'm more than pleased with the way he's carrying on with this matter. Thank you.
So, thank you, Peter. Yes, of course, a considerable amount of work was done initially before the executive made the decision to listen to the comments of the residents of North Somerset, and also of that the government were muting out that they would be introducing in the NPPF. So, yes, there is work being done, and there would be some movement, unhappy movement in my view, and I don't think it is something that we would just simply offer up to destroy the things that are precious to us in this council and the residents. But we know that the inspector sometimes have a slightly different view, but I think we're going in the right direction, and I appreciate your support in that direction. But officers have done work and are continuing to do work to make sure that we can adapt or fit to what the inspector requires.
Thank you. And I've got Councillor Bridger. Steve, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I also support this approach, absolutely. I just want a couple of quick points. I was really pleased to hear Mark actually reference floodplain, because I think there's a lot of focus on people automatically think about green belt, but I think the floodplain is just as important. Flood zone 3 I'm talking about. I'm still slightly uncomfortable. I'll have to see what comes forward in the Reg 19 sort of consultation document that uncomfortable about a blanket no to green belt. I still think there needs to be some room for nuance there, but that's for later. And then a quick point for information, really. At what point this emerging local plan gains some weight in terms of potential council decisions or appeal decisions? I'm assuming it's when the Reg 19 report is submitted for examination, or is it earlier when it actually goes out for public consultation? Just some clarification around that, please, Chair.
So, thanks, Steve. I'll try to answer that, and if I'm wrong, I'm sure Richard will jump in. But in terms of, I'm glad you support the way we've looked at that, and officers have been pretty strong regarding Flood Zone 3 right through the period that we've been working on this. In terms of weight, well, once it's gone through executive, it will hold limited weight, I believe, but only limited weight at that stage. And of course, we need to get it through the consultation and then full council to actually for it to hold the weight that we need it to prevent. So at that stage, I'm sure there'll be developers who will be putting forward proposals which really don't suit the local plan, because I'll see it then what we're in the direction we'll travel, and I don't know whether Richard wants to add anything.
Yeah, thank you. I'll bring in Richard Kent, our Head of Planning.
I think the situation is that the plan does gather weight as it moves through the process, but it's not quite as simple as that, because it depends on the extent of objection to any policies or proposals in the draft plan. If there are objections, particularly significant objections, then there is greater risk that the policy or proposal might change as a result of the examination. If there is little or no objection to a policy or proposal, it's likely to carry on through to the end of the process, and therefore that policy or proposal can be given more weight as a result. So it's too early to say, but it does depend how much comments you get on a particular element of the plan at the Reg 19 consultation stage.
Thank you very much. A good example of the challenges and complexities of planning there, because I think it's a yes and a no, isn't it, to your question. So thanks very much. I can't see any further questions. Can I just put on record, and we obviously have got a long way to go, but I just put on record our thanks to all the officers who've been engaged in our local plan development process. We did a huge amount of work in previous years in the run-up and during some of the consultation and engagement phases, and the work carries on, and we really do appreciate the thinking and planning and policy development work that goes in. This report actually just gives you a snapshot, really, of where we've got to in terms of the local plan development process, and there's huge amount of work that goes on developing individual policies that support the local plan in due course. So please do pass on our thanks, Richard, to the team, and we're absolutely determined to drive this forward and hopefully get the plan out there for further consultation so that we can get to a submission stage as quickly as possible. So can I ask my colleagues to indicate their support for the recommendations, please? Thank you very much. Okay, so I'll move on to item 11, which is our monthly budget monitor for month 3. So I think the key headlines to note, so it's obviously early days, only 3 months into the financial year, but we can see that some of the financial pressures that we know have existed for North Somerset and local government for many years are very much still alive. Although we're forecasting a net overspend that in the context of the budget at about 1% is small, we're still talking about £2 million forecast overspend for the end of the financial year. And the report goes into some detail setting out where we've got particular challenges and cost pressures. There are some recurring themes here, really, in terms of the challenges that we've faced in previous years with children's services, so particularly around placement costs and supporting disabled children's packages, facing significant overspends totally linked to demand and the growing cost of providing some of these specialist placements and services. And we've also got particular challenges in the Police Directorate around waste disposal costs and home to school transport. So I would absolutely encourage colleagues to read the detail, and particularly for exec members and for our policy and scrutiny panels, to make sure that they're working with directorates and officers to understand those issues and some of the mitigations that we're putting in place. Of course, as we always do, we will continue to focus on minimising those cost pressures and making sure that we can deliver some savings and mitigations in year to balance the budget by month 12. But it's important to note where we've got to so far as of month 3. This obviously leads into the next item on the agenda as well in terms of our long-term position. Amy, anything you want to add to that? No? Okay. Can I have a seconder? I can't remember whether we've got an actual recommendation. Well, it's probably principally noting, isn't it? And there's a few in-year amendments that are referenced in the report. So can I have I'll propose that. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Catherine. All in favour, please? Thank you. And I'll now move on to item 12, which is the medium-term financial plan update. So again, this is looking much more about our 4-year financial plan, the particular acute pressures that we're going to face in 24-25, but also over the longer term. We know that local government finance has been in the news this week in terms of the challenges that have been experienced with Birmingham City Council, and I think anyone that has been involved in a user of a service or a partner for North Somerset Council will know that we have effectively had a decade or more of austerity in local government where our financial pressures have been really significant. This report updates the information that we presented to Council back in February in terms of our revenue budget for 24-25, but also the longer term challenges over the 4-year period. You can see that we've got real significant additional pressures that have arisen since we set our MTFP and budget back in February 23, so only a few months ago. And at the moment, we're forecasting a budget gap, so a gap between the income that we're able to generate through government grants, council tax and fees and charges, and the cost of providing our services of around £50 million over a 4-year period. So a really significant gap, and that is, as so often, front-loaded for 24-25 with a current shortfall of around £17 million. So we're talking about a challenge that is involving something like 10% of our budget for 24-25. And again, I would just reiterate, this is not a unique and exceptional circumstance. This has been par for the course year after year after year. So this is not an easy challenge for us to rise to at all. So I'll ask Amy, our Director of Corporate Services, to just give a bit of colour in terms of this, if you'd like to, please.
Thank you. Yes, so I just wanted to add as well, following on from the national news, that some councils are now issuing Section 114 notices, which, just to remind members and those who may be watching, means that the council has to immediately halt all non-essential expenditure, and is effectively saying that they are not able to meet the demands of services in the area and balance the budget. So I did want to reassure you that although North Somerset Council is facing significant budget pressures, as the leader has just outlined, and they're particularly stark over this period due to the inflation that we're experiencing, along with obviously households and residents. We're not in a similar financial territory at this stage, and we do have resources in terms of reserves and our risk management mitigations that we go through on an annual basis. So we're facing a £2 million overspend in this financial year and a £50 million gap over the next 44 years. Sorry, not 40 years. That would be nicer. So obviously it's really challenging in the medium term in terms of the potential impact on services and how we manage those risks and mitigate them. We're at the start of that financial planning period and also the consultation on the corporate plan. So the intention will be, of course, to align both and bring back regular updates to the executive. Thanks.
Thank you, Amy. And actually, I'll just add, as Amy alluded to, we are at the moment going through an initial phase of consultation on the medium-term financial plan, and we're particularly keen to hear from communities and to encourage residents and businesses and other partners and stakeholders to engage in that process and let us have your views about what's most important to you to inform our budget choices and the decisions that we have to make over the next few months. So I would encourage all colleagues to please promote that and make sure that we get a really good piece of engagement with that. And that's just the beginning of the process in terms of our engagement work, working with councillors and other partners to try and make sure that we're prioritising on the right things, protecting frontline services as much as we can, and of course balancing the books. And I think it's also, just to add to Amy's reassurance, you know, I would just underline that despite what some people think from time to time, we are actually a low spending, low cost and high performing council. So if you look at the comparators, you know, council tax is lower here than the average. Our average spend per head is lower here than the average. The amount of grant that we get from government is lower than the average, and yet our outcomes right across the board in terms of services are strong and improving. So it's really worth noting that our officers have done an amazing job, despite more than a decade of austerity, to continue to deliver good quality services in an efficient and effective way, and we'll continue to do everything that we can to try and continue that excellent record. Any questions or comments? Councillor Solomon, Mike.
Yes, Amy. This 50 million shortfall over the next 4 years is probably in the report, so forgive me if I've missed it. Do we include any of our assets that we can sell off over those 4 years within that figure? And have we got £50 million worth of assets?
So, I mean, the answer to that is going to be no, isn't it? Go on, Amy.
It's no and then yes. So yes, we do have £50 million worth of assets, but we need some of those to deliver our services. So obviously in terms of what we might have, which we could develop a divestment strategy which might release some income. That's part of our asset management strategy. We can take the proceeds from sale, but we can't use them to support our revenue budget. So they're ring-fenced for more capital expenditure. However, that's very, very helpful because we have a lot of capital risk as well that we need to mitigate in terms of that. So we'd welcome opportunities to review our asset base. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? I can't see any. So can I have... no, I've had a seconder, haven't I? Catherine seconded it at the beginning. I'm forgetting my own order here. Okay. Would everyone like to indicate their support for the recommendations, please? Great stuff. Thank you very much. Yeah, you don't have the option of doing it. Yeah, indicate your support. Yeah, thank you. Okay, next item 13, which is Councillor Caniford, the UK Shared Prosperity Fund Year 3 allocation.
Thanks, Mike. Yes, and we do have Jane Harrison here to answer any questions that we might have. The UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which I'll refer to as the UK SPF from here on in, is a plan that was put forward in August 22 to government and accepted. The first 2 years have been very successful. And what this item in the agenda is, Chair, is the fact that we just need to pass through and accept the expenditure for the third year, which is far higher than the others due to the skills agenda, as the expenditure which was being covered by European funds finished this year. So next year's expenditure is also included in this. So there's an appendix of the schemes that are proposed. They are all focused around community in place, supporting local businesses and people in skills. And Councillor Solomon's trying to put me off. Anyway, so the whole allocation was 2.5, just over 2.5 million over 3 years.
Sorry, everybody.
And we have asked for certain things for this, in the sense that the economy team are fully aware that we want to see some KPIs regarding and attached to this, because there is a hope that we will get another level of funding in the future. We're not assured of that, but we do need to make sure that these projects have given us the benefit that we would be seeking for them. So I'm looking support for the expenditure as it is, the 1.267 to be spent from this for your revenue budget, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mark. And is there a seconder? I mean, it should be Councillor Solomon, really, shouldn't it? Yeah, thank you very much, Mike. Any questions or comments on the report? Nope, I can't see any hands. So again, if colleagues are happy to indicate their support. Thank you very much. Okay, and I'll move on to the next item, which is not loading on my laptop, which is helpful. So, Councillor Young this time, item 14, which is the adoption of moving traffic enforcement powers.
Thank you very much. So hopefully this paper is quite straightforward for people. Moving traffic enforcement includes a number of illegal manoeuvres, such as turning left or right, where there's signage to say that you shouldn't be doing that, doing a U-turn where you shouldn't, or not being around the area of a school where that's prohibited for vehicles. Just to clarify for everyone, moving traffic offences don't include speeding. That still remains the sole responsibility of the police. And the reason that we're bringing this recommendation today is that since last May, as in May 2022, councils have been able to apply to share moving traffic enforcement powers with their local police service. We haven't done that so far, and this paper is requesting that we make that move and we have that application. What that will mean is that we can better enforce existing traffic regulation orders. At the moment, it's very difficult to do so because obviously only the police have the power to do that. So there are 3 recommendations: one, that the council applies for the civil enforcement powers, that the future locations for those enforcements are delegated to the head of highway and parking operations in consultation with myself or future members of executive members for transport and highways, and to approve a revenue budget as detailed in section 5 of the paper, which is really to start off the scheme. And I also want to make the point in relation to those recommendations that there has been an engagement process that's taken place with ward councillors and communities around a location as an initial location, and members of the public may have seen that in our consultations area and within the press, which has been around Searle Crescent in Weston-super-Mare, where there should be a no right turn, but a number of people are currently turning right at that junction with Winterstoke Road. We've been required to do that piece of engagement in order to apply for the powers, and also to have engagement plans around future locations. So there would still be consultation and governance processes around any new locations which were taken forward. And one of the areas that we're specifically keen to enforce is around schools, where there particularly might be safety issues for children and for parents. So lastly, the money that is raised through enforcement powers will be used to support us to be able to identify new sites. This isn't about generating revenue for the council to fund other services. It's about being able to put in place schemes that members of the public ask us for because they want to be safer on the roads. So there are limitations about how we spend enforcement money. So that's not what we're doing it for. There will be a revenue stream for the council, but that is, as I say, to continue enforcement of other sites where that's necessary, and we're being asked to do that by communities. So I'd just ask for support for the 3 recommendations.
Thank you, Hannah. Seconder, please. Councillor Solomon. Any questions or comments from anyone? Councillor Canniford.
Yeah, just one. Again, thanks, Hannah. Just to reiterate, you did say that we would be effectively in control of those places that we decide to go with enforcement. One of my bugbears has been for some time is blocking of yellow boxes. That's fine, and we should enforce that as long as it's a sensible yellow box. So, for example, the one at Banwell, someone entering from the western direction can be cut up and cut off and be left in the box with no choice. So we just need to make sure that they're appropriate places.
There is actually detail in the regulations and their associated guidance around what you have to do in terms of the enforcement. So you can't just suddenly decide one day that you're going to enforce a particular area. You have to go through a process of engagement with communities and show that there's a need to do so. And of course, I perhaps should have mentioned that the way the enforcement would take place, we don't have parking attendants running after cars. This would be by ANPR, CCTV. So we would, it's a process of putting these in place. We can't just move them from one location to another without some serious consideration.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we've had a proposer and seconder, so would colleagues like to indicate their support for the recommendations? Thank you very much. Thank you, Hannah. So we'll move on to item 15, which is Councillor Waite and Amika, and it's the commissioning procurement plan for garden waste treatment.
Thank you. I'm assuming that people will have read the papers, and if you have, then when you have, you will have noted that our current contract with Enervert for the treatment and disposal of household waste and other waste expires at the end of February 2024. Following consultation, it was agreed that the contract should be broken up into 4 parts, and garden waste treatment that we're talking about at the moment is one of these 4. So the operation of the waste transfer station and outward haulage to treatment facilities was awarded to NSEC in April 2023, and this contract is due to start in March 24. The tender for food waste is currently being finalised, with the contract due to commence in March 24. And the commissioning and procurement plan here deals with the treatment specifically of garden waste. So the details of the plan are outlined in the document, but I would like to make a few points that I think are worth making. This contract is solely for North Somerset Council. Baines has expressed a potential interest in the contract at a later date, so it is our intention to name them as an interested party at the contract advert stage. The value of the contract has been estimated based on our existing price per tonne plus an allowance for an increase based on current market prices, which obviously have gone up considerably with inflation. This means that the cost might come out higher than it currently is, but the new contract may bring savings on haulage if contractors are based more local, and that is one of the things that we are looking at in the contract awarding. Any costs over and above the existing revenue budget are expected to be funded through savings made on other re-procurement. So the timescale is that we'd like the advert to be out in September 23, with the contract awarded in December and the contract to commence in March 24. So are there any questions? If not, I would like to recommend this plan to be approved.
Thank you, Anamika. So firstly, can I have a seconder for the recommendations? Councillor Clayton, thank you. Any questions or comments? No? Oh, yes. Go on, Mark.
Just a quick one, because I did ask the question, not to you though, is about where does it go ultimately? Does it get sold back to the public? I know some councils sell bulk to households, so they can get rid of the 16,000 tonnes, because
exactly.
And if that's a possibility in North Somerset, it could be a payback to the community.
I think we are looking at all those options as we go forward to see how we can literally make some money out of the waste that we have, and I think that is one of the things that's really quite important as we go out to contracting. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So there are no further questions. So if colleagues could indicate their support, please. Thank you very much. And then it's a double whammy of exciting waste treatment updates from Anamika, because we've now got item 16, which is the commissioning and procurement plan for residual waste treatment.
Who knew that waste was so exciting? So yes, this is for a contingency plan for residual waste. So most of our residual waste is contracted out. We have 3 different contracts for residual waste, and 2 of which are recently contracted out, and they run out in 2030 and have an option to be extended for a further 10 years. So this particular commissioning and procurement plan that we're looking at deals only with the contingency arrangements. So this is when the council's main residual waste facility for some reason might be unavailable. So with my climate change and sustainability hat on, I'd like to point out that as a council, we aim for zero waste to go to landfill as soon as possible. So it's important in the procurement programme to have an arrangement that really avoids landfill, and that is something that we're actively looking at. So this being a contract for residual waste, there is logically some uncertainty about the tonnage amounts that are involved here. And when you then go out to contracting, that might affect the attractiveness of the contract. So because of this, it is recommended that we co-procure this residual waste arrangement with Bath and North East Somerset Council, which might actually make it more attractive for competitive bidders. So the details for the tendering process are outlined in the document, and again, the advert will be out in September this month, the contract to be awarded in December, and for the contract to commence in March. That's it.
Thank you very much, Annemieke. And a seconder for this one. Thank you, Councillor Solomon. Any questions or comments? Yep, Mike.
Yes, Annemieke, in my understanding that we've got to react very quickly on some of this stuff, because with the food residual waste, there's legislation now coming forward that it's going to have to be put through treatment, and there aren't many plants that do it. So we need to get in very quickly, don't we, with the various contracts we want to put in place.
Absolutely, and that's why we'd like to get going with this procurement plan as quickly as possible, and we'll take all of those things into account.
Thank you. So I've got no further questions or comments. So again, would colleagues like to indicate whether they are in favour? Thank you very much. That's carried. It's Commission Plan Run, isn't it? Because now we've got Item 17, which is the commissioning plan for the delivery of SEND interventions. So I think this is a joint report from Councillor Gibbons and Councillor Waite, but I think Catherine is going to lead on this one. So Catherine, please.
Yes, thank you. I'll start off. Yes, so basically, as you've seen, and unlike Annemieke, my colleague, I'm assuming you've all read the papers. This report's asking you to agree a commissioning plan and allocation of funds for 3 extra resource spaces and a nurture group. The it's £3,045,000 will be using safety valve, high needs provision, capital funding, and Section 106 funding, as is detailed in the report. So I'm just going to focus on possibly why we need this, and you might be asking what resource bases and nurture groups actually are. I think it's very clearly articulated actually in the equality impact assessment in the paper, because it's very comprehensive, and I'd like to thank Sally, who's sitting opposite me, for preparing the report. For those of you who don't know, a resource base, and we have 3 planned here, one at Hannah Moore in Nailsea School, and that is an ASD and anxiety base. One at Whirl Academy, which is an ASD base, and one at Hans Price Academy, and also a nurture group at Christchurch Primary School. And by the way, ASD normally is an acronym for what we define in papers like this as an autism spectrum disorder. However, having spoken very often with young people and children from our SEND Council, I would be using the term autism spectrum diagnosis, because young people don't like the term disorder, and they've made that very clear to us in many, many meetings. So anyway, the focus of these bases is that we can keep young people with an SEND need in a mainstream school on site, in a place that enables them to receive the support that they need, that's covered by the EHCP, that's their education and healthcare plan. And this is in line with our policy to try and make sure that wherever possible, a child can stay in the local area and in a mainstream school with the right support. These units help that happen. The focus of the nurture groups is slightly different in that it provides a short-term intervention for children and young people that have social, emotional, behavioural difficulties, or something that's creating a barrier to learning within the mainstream class. That's often due to trauma or family problems. And I know, because I've spoken to parents who've, in the ones we have already up and running, have been amazed by the fact that their children have actually been able to attend a mainstream school and sit down and learn in this environment, something that the parents thought couldn't happen, but is happening now. So with this plan, we will be able to deliver more of this kind of facility for these young people. We've got nearly 2,000 young people. So I think it's 1,885 young people who have an EHCP, and this is increasing yearly. So being aware of the gaps that are in the locality for provision, I think that these new bases and the nurture group will go some way to help us delivering on our expectation and ambition that our young people with SEND should have a local school place and have their needs met. We've done a lot of work over the past 18 months to improve the experiences of our young people, and the nurture groups and resource bases already up and running have been incredibly successful in ensuring that needs can be met within a mainstream school rather than specialist provision where it's possible and appropriate. So this is part of our strategy overall to increase SEND capacity in mainstream schools, which will see further facilities over the coming years across 13 more schools. You'll have obviously looked at the consultation and you'll have seen the risk management. And as I said before, I think the equality impact assessment is the key thing to articulating the principles behind our SEND capital strategy and what we will achieve in terms of having an inclusive society where all children can thrive and reach their full potential. I will ask my colleague Anamika if she wants to make any comments, and equally if Sally has anything to add.
I think that my only comment would be that I think this is a wonderful, this will be a wonderful provision for us as a council, and I fully support this. I think it will potentially be quite transformational.
Nothing else to add to the report, but I think probably some good news in that we've opened 3 new nurture groups and 2 resource bases this week, so that's good news too.
Pip Hesketh is online. I don't know if, Pip, you want to add anything to this?
So, Catherine, thank you for inviting me. I don't really have very much to add, except that the success of the nurture groups far exceeds anything that we thought it might achieve. And we have parents telling us, if this was in place when I was at school, my whole life would have looked differently. We have other parents saying, I was told my child could never learn independently, and yet here he is back in the classroom. I can't shut him up. He's so excited about his learning. So I think it's taken us all a bit by surprise. We're delighted, of course, but on the back of the work that we've commissioned as a council, we now have 2 multi-academy trusts who have committed to convert every one of their schools to a nurture school.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. So first of all, can I have a seconder for the recommendations? Thank you, Anamika. That makes sense. And any questions or comments? So Hannah, Councillor Young.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask, I'm glad you referenced the number of pupils that, as is stated in the paper, because it's obviously a very significant number of children that this applies to, and I think we've all expressed a desire that our next corporate plan has a much greater focus on the experience of children. So I think, you know, I really welcome this paper and all the work that's been done around SEND provision. I think it's a real achievement over a very long period of time by a large number of people. So I wanted to flag that up, but I particularly want to pick up the point in the paper around the gaps in local provision around social and emotional mental health, ASD and speech and language and moderate learning difficulties needs. I think, you know, this is not my area, so forgive me if it's a basic question, but those gaps in provision, do we receive funding as a council to support particularly speech and language needs? I think I heard someone say recently that in some other authority areas that the health budgets from the integrated care boards were being applied to some of those areas. Are we getting appropriate contributions from those very significant budgets? I appreciate those are stretched, but
yes,
thank you.
Yes, we do. We could always hope for more, but yes, we do.
Okay, thank you. I can't see any more hands, so thank you very much, colleagues. If you could indicate your support for the recommendations. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to item 18, which is also with Catherine, and that's the commissioning and procurement plan for the provision of the holiday activities and food programme for 2024.
Thank you. So hopefully this is another potentially good news item. So yes, as you've said, the holiday and activity and food programme. This is actually to approve the joint commissioning and procurement plan to provide this programme for 2024. I'm sure you're all aware of the programme, which was introduced in 2021 for initially a 3-year period. It's government funded, but its success in North Somerset is entirely due, I think, to the hard work of our North Somerset team of officers from Children's Services, including the author of the paper, Shelley Smith, and, of course, the fantastic providers that we managed to identify over the last couple of years who delivered...
No, please.
Sorry?
I think that was Pip agreeing with you, so carry on.
Yes, so the fantastic providers who've delivered a great range of activities for young people. So I know this personally because I've had the chance to visit some of the providers and talk to the children and the parents, and I've no doubt about the positive impact it's had for them. I mean, one parent actually was featured on an ITV, BBC report recently, saying that it was an absolute godsend for her. So it's just a bit of background, which is in the paper, so I won't bore you with reading the details that you've already read yourself. But we have 150 families with children who qualify for the activity programme, food programme. But in actual fact, we only had 1,457 who accessed it. That's 28%. So we're hoping that with the new plan, we can see that rise to around 50 to 75% attendance. And it's linked to the previous item, I think, that next year the Holiday Activities Fund will work more closely with providers to enable children with SEND to join in more sessions and have opportunities to mix with their peers, which I hope will increase their attendance to above the 16% of qualifying children with EHCPs. The framework itself is designed to ensure consistency of provision, and though a place on the framework won't actually guarantee a provider the funding. One key point to note, because I'm often asked, is whether the providers need to be Ofsted registered. They don't need to be. It's not compulsory, but it is preferable. Now, I won't go through it in great detail because through pages 181 to 83, you'll see the details of the process, the timeline, the criteria, and the scoring matrix. I would also note that there's no impact from this programme on the MTFP, nor any savings to be gained, since it is funded by the DFE, and the cost can't exceed the allocated grant, and indeed, if we have an underspend, that has to be returned. I'm happy to take any questions, but I hope that you will agree with me that we should approve this commissioning plan and get on with the timeline after today's vote to make sure that we're delivering this programme to the best of our abilities next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. And can I have a seconder, please? Thanks, Hannah. Okay, any questions or comments on the programme? Nope. Okay. Could colleagues please indicate their support for the recommendations? Thank you very much. Okay. Item 19, which is with James Clayton, Councillor Clayton. So, Public Space Protection Orders Review 2023. James. Please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The report that you have in front of you recommends that renewal of all area-wide PSPOs, so we retain what we've got currently. Every 3 years, this has to be reviewed. The recommendation from the report that there is a new provision that is included within the area-wide order, meaning that no person shall walk more than 6 dogs at any one time. I think it's important to recognise that this has gone out to consultation, and in consultation the public do appear to be in support of these recommendations. With our own statistics though, from 2020 we have seen out-of-control dog cases from 385 go up to 480 in 2023. Also, the report shows you that we are looking to expand existing powers to tackle substance misuse. This has also gone out for consultation with support, so we are looking to not necessarily make this area wide, but take this to other areas within North Somerset. Furthermore, we are looking to go to towns and parishes to undertake further engagements with stakeholders for more localised area-specific orders, and that is something that the officers will look to report back on. So, if there is any questions, I'd like to recommend the report as it is.
Thank you very much, James. And can I get a seconder, please? Councillor Caniford. Okay, any questions? Yes, Councillor Burden.
Thank you, Chairman. The one I want to pick up on, I'm totally in agreement with the renewing of all the powers we've already got. The one that I'm slightly dubious about is the walking more than 6 dogs at a time. One, let me say, as an interest, I'm trustee of a charity which rents a piece of land for commercial dog walking, and I believe the people there are tied by the limits that no individual can walk more than 6 dogs at any one time as part of their licence for working commercially with animals. I've suffered quite a lot over the years with dogs being dangerously out of control or chasing livestock, all of which have been owned by people who've had 1 or 2 dogs and handled them badly. I also know some people, a very limited number, but one of them can control 9 dogs at once. And I think this is unreasonable to pick up on this as an overall, when we already have the power for one of our official wardens to ask and instruct anybody to put their dog on a lead. As an anecdote, Chairman, I work for a hot air balloon company, and at the balloon fiesta last year, a fair number of the balloons headed off towards Yatton. Landed in a field, 2 Labradors came over and were totally out of control, whereas the pilot and I noticed in the corner of the field in Yatton, there was a man on his own with about 25 beagles. Those beagles didn't move. Am I led to believe by this, Chairman, that the person with their 2 dogs would be totally legal, yet the man in control of over 20 without causing any damage at all would be covered by this order? I just think it's a step too far and, in my view, unnecessary, because we already have the provision that if somebody's got any dog out of control or causing a nuisance, put it on a lead, which most people, responsible dog owners, should anyway.
Thank you, Peter. Can I just say, I don't think it's a shock to anyone to learn that Councillor Burden is familiar with hot air. Sorry, I couldn't resist that. James, do you want to just pick up that point?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Although I take on board what Councillor Burden is saying, us as an authority, with the rise in cases and obviously with the public consultation in favour, we are also looking to work in line with the practitioner's manual for dealing with irresponsible dog ownerships, which is recommended at not exceeded of 6. You can find that in the source on page 44 of the manual.
I think it's also worth noting, isn't it, that we did do a public consultation on these proposals, and there was strong support for the proposal that we institute the limit at 6. But clearly, you know, there will be exceptional circumstances, and we'll need to keep that under review in terms of the operational realities. So I've got Councillor Solomon and then Councillor Gibbons.
Yes, I'm hearing what Peter was saying about out-of-control dogs. I was subjected to a lot of trauma this morning when I was doing a BBC interview on the beach when an out-of-control Labrador picked up my coffee, drank it and ran off with it. So I do sympathise.
Thank you, Mike. I hope it was decaf. Catherine.
Thank you. Yes, I was just going to say I hear what Councillor Burden is saying, but I honestly think that the people who walk 9 or 20 dogs and have them totally under control are the exception, not the rule, and that anybody walking 6 dogs, your dogs are not predictable. You can train them extremely well. I'm a dog owner, but something can happen and that can trigger them and they act like a pack. And even 6 dogs can be difficult to control, particularly when occasionally parents allow quite young people to take large dogs out, 2 or 3 of them, and I've witnessed a young lad having huge problems trying to control 2 dogs when approached by another dog. So I think this is only sensible, and it is the number recommended by the RSPCA.
Yeah, go ahead, James.
Yeah, I think it's important that we won't be taking a zero tolerance approach to this like we do with dog fouling and dog exclusion zones. Instead, a warning will be given in the first instance, and if further problems then arise, then we will look to fine the individual committing the offences on multiple times. Sorry.
Mike and then Peter.
Yes, I just want to... I was frivolous in my last comment, but my granddaughter was badly mauled by a pet dog at home and has had 3 operations on her arm. My wife was attacked by a dog and had to have about 5 operations. So I do understand what's being said, that some people control their dogs, others don't.
Thank you. And Peter.
Can I thank James profusely for his comment that this won't be used as a blanket, it will be when causing a problem.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. So can I ask colleagues to indicate their support for the recommendations then, please? Thank you very much. And the final report on the agenda, item 20, which is the Wraxall and Fayland Neighbourhood Plan submission. So Mark, Councillor Caniford, please.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, thank Wraxall and Fayland for the hard work they've put into the neighbourhood plan, which they have done very diligently. This is really a process that we have to go through, Chair, so they have got to a position now where a 6-week formal consultation can take place, which should be through sort of October, November time. And then we'll be seeking to source an examiner to examine their neighbourhood plan and to make sure that it is sound. It is not North Somerset Council that does that. We are just the authority that makes sure that the provisions and the legals are run through councils properly. So we're looking for support of this to move it on to the next stage so they can go to consultation, and also so the examiner can be appointed to examine that plan.
Thank you, Mark. Can I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Solomon. Any questions or comments? Yes. Roger, Councillor Whitfield.
Hi, yeah, just a quick question. Risk management 8.1 on the report. It says the plan has been prepared by Place Studio Consultants on behalf of Portishead Town Council. Is this a typo?
If I said no, you'd be really concerned, but yes, and I'll get it changed.
Thank you, Roger, and top marks for clearly having read the whole report. So I've got no further questions or comments on that. So again, if colleagues could indicate their support, please. Thank you very much. Okay, and then item 21, any oral reports or updates that any exec members want to give today? Nope, I can't see any. Okay, thank you very much, colleagues. And item 22, which is urgent business, there is none. So at 7:09, I am happy to close the meeting. Thank you very much.